company valued at 300 million, we gon' show you how to do it. Well, we got the roadmap, the aspirations. We'll give you a game plan and strategies. Seize control of your company's destiny today by tuning in to Private Capital Mastery. Yeah. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Private Capital Mastery Podcast, where we delve into important topics that support entrepreneurs like you in your journey to maximize capital growth opportunities. Joining us today is Ellen Robinson, an expert from team performance who believes that organizations thrive when leaders focus on building values-driven cultures that are essential to integration and capital growth. The Barrett model is the new gold standard in culture assessment tools and is here to guide us on the journey of creating a win-win environment for employees, customers, and shareholders alike. Ellen, thank you for being here with me. Thank you for spending the time here on the Private Capital Mastery Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for the honor to be here today.
That's great. Dude, let's have some fun. I mean, you've done amazing work over the last, I think, 37 years, right?
Yes.
And in that time, the wisdom that you have gained is so important. And, you know, the beauty of that is that your years of wisdom is going to be compressed into 20, 30 minutes here. So we'll squeeze in as much as we can, but whatever we can, we always would invite you back to sit with us and talk with us. But let's dive into it, if that sounds great.
That sounds awesome to me.
Okay. All right. Well, Ellen, could you share a case study or an example that illustrates how an organization's culture assessment using the Barrett model leads to improvements or transformations? And if you could also add, you know, maybe a case study or, you know, an experience that you had, what were the challenges faced by the organization before implementing this model, and how did it impact their overall viability and success?
Would it be okay if I shared two case studies, one that didn't implement the model and one that did?
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay. I want to share two different stories with you, one that used the Barrett model and one that didn't. A friend of mine was on his journey to hire an investment banker and to sell his business. He had grown it from very humble beginnings to a $50 million business. And he was very smart in surrounding himself with people smarter than him. And he was well known in the industry for creating a very positive, values-driven culture. In fact, they would have rooms called joy and passion, and instead of regular meeting rooms, and they stood for something really big. They stood for joy, innovation, teamwork, and making a difference. And these are very strong values that his 180 employees, he employed 180 people, and all of them reported what a great place it was to work. So when he was looking for a buyer, he wanted a buyer that would make sure that they kept the culture in place. That was like his number one priority. So he went out, and a billion-dollar company was looking at his company and several other companies that they were acquiring to diversify their portfolio. And in doing so, I looked at the billion-dollar company to see what the core values were. And the core values were performance, bottom line results, efficiency, quality, all really good values. But the values of the purchasing company were different than his company. And I expressed concern, and he said, no, it's all going to work out. And fast forward, the company bought him. He got the price he wanted for it. And 7 years later, the culture has totally been dismantled. And this man spent over 40 years building this culture, and his legacy was gone in 7 years.
I
So
was
it's
just going to say his legacy, yes, his culture, but the legacy that he left behind was dismantled. I mean, it happens, right? I mean, this is a great case study, but please, tell us more, because it sounds like there's more to the story.
Thank you, because there is more to the story. Not only did his culture get dismantled, but morale was at an all-time low, engagement was at an all-time low, and turnover was at an all-time high. And they have been having trouble trying to fill those positions. So, according to Harvard, in one of their studies, reported that there are many studies that report numbers from 50 to 90% of mergers and acquisitions fail. And they cite one key reason, and that's due to the cultural integration or lack of the cultural integration. So, by using the Barrett methodology, we can actually help you with the cultural integration piece. We can give you a roadmap how to leverage the strengths of one organization with the other, so the chances of success increase significantly.
Which is so important, because when you look at M&A transactions, you have teams that are exclusively committed to financial due diligence and integration. You have teams focused on HR due diligence and integration, operational due diligence and integration. And the reality is, I don't see anyone typically, I mean, there's been a couple transactions where they did have a very strong ambassador of culture, right, that would come in and integrate the companies. But for the most part, I can see that cultural integration is something that is an afterthought. And it's not surprising to hear that those studies have reported 50 to 90%, I think, if those were the numbers, that of mergers and acquisitions do they fail, or what did those studies show? Because that's a high number.
Well, yes, it is a very high number. Well, they don't succeed to the level that they could had they done their cultural due diligence. It's really a mindful process of how do we strategically align our businesses so at the top, the leaders are aligned too, because there's turfism and there's silos, and people want to keep their way of how they work, and the other wants to keep the way they work. It's the success relies on them being able to have those conversations up front. And how do we actually do this?
Yeah, I could see that. There was a merger years ago between Bank of America and Merrill Lynch. And from what I heard from a few colleagues that had worked for Merrill Lynch, that when they merged the entities, there were still lines drawn between the companies, where Bank of America at that time had a relationship with 1 out of every 4 households. So 25% of households Bank of America had an existing relationship with. And so the Merrill Lynch folks coming in this merger, they were essentially second in line to access those opportunities, and they were second in line behind the legacy Bank of America employees. So it created this cultural collision, I would call it, and it was complicated. And out of that, the one individual that I had talked to about this, that worked with Merrill Lynch, he left the company because of this. And it really speaks to, cultural alignment, because we work very carefully with our clients when we're constructing or architecting a deal, and those deal, specifically the deal terms, and deal terms can at times include contingent payments or some sort of upside potential based on certain targets and measurements, which is not hard to track and is not hard to achieve. But the underlying issue that I see in this conversation around culture is that culture is something that's not typically measured. You have tools, specifically the Barrett model, that measure culture. That's amazing, because our fiduciary responsibility with our clients is to guide them and protect them. And for that reason alone, I would highly suggest that there would be some sort of measurement of culture, specifically the Barrett model, which we're going to learn more about in this conversation. And that's why I've been so excited to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Brian, how about I share a story with you about one of my clients that I worked with that was actually hired me to scale his business.
Yes.
And it was I was totally honored to be able to work with this company. The founder is like really a big contributor to the world and making a difference with his clients and doing good work in the world. And he hired me in to help him with the Barrett methodology and his culture. And he was the founder, he was the sales driver, he was the total rainmaker of the organization. And he was very clear that in order to create sustainability and scale the business, he needed to duplicate himself. So we hired a managing partner, and the managing partner was in place for 10 months, and he was grooming him for leadership. And in the middle of that, they hired me to do a Barrett assessment, and the results were amazing. They had some very powerful results that came up in their current culture, like agility, teamwork, making a difference, and innovation. And at the same time, they had some potentially limiting beliefs that were coming up, such as insecurity, blame, silo mentality, conflict avoidance, and confusion. And it was, a clash between what was working and what wasn't working. And people were putting in long hours because they were afraid of losing their job. And what they really wanted was work-life balance. So I customized a training experience for them, and it was going fabulous. And everybody was engaged. And the founder was so committed to this being an awesome experience. He knew that everybody would have a stronger voice if he didn't participate. So he ducked out of the second part of the training, and we started diving into some of the issues, and the training was going great. Everybody was engaged. We were working on this thing called long hours and where the blame was coming from, and coming up with a roadmap. And you could see the level of motivation and inspiration was building in the team. And then something crazy happened. We were at the very end of the training, and the managing partner, out of the blue, became very authoritative and started degrading the employees right in front of me. Like, Ellen's asking you a question. Why aren't you speaking up? And I went, oh my gosh, that is the weak link at the top. And I knew in that moment that was the reason they hired me, was to be able to identify that this managing partner was not aligned with the vision or the values that they want to embark on. So what they did is in the follow-up coaching session I had with the owner, we had a heart-to-heart conversation about his behavior and how he showed up. And I coached him through the process of who inside your organization would be a good fit that could take over and you could mentor. And he came up with that solution. And it was remarkable. And fast forward, now they're doing fabulous. The culture is aligned. People are singing off the same song sheet. They're getting more results than they imagined. And the company is now positioned in a great place to be able to be sold if and when he's ready to do that. So it was a great example of the power of using the Barrett methodology.
That is a great example and very specific to that case study. Thank you for sharing that with us, because it really illustrates, you know, the discovery that you go through. And it sounds like in this case study, you know, you went through the discovery, you went through the coaching and the mentoring, and then this partner, you know, revealed his true self in this meeting that you described. But at least you were able to witness it and see it and give advice on how to correct it, because otherwise it would probably still be a mystery to this day, right?
Yeah.
You know.
And it's a true example that people in your organization can only rise to the level of the leaders. So if you have a leader that's blocking growth, then that's exactly where the organization stops at. So it's important to identify leaders that are effective, that can scale the business, and leaders that are ineffective, that you might have to have a different path for them.
That makes a lot of sense. So I would imagine, you know, there's many case studies that you could share with us, but if you can consolidate, you know, the typical pain points or challenges that organizations face when they're struggling, you know, with their cultural dynamics, what are some of those typical pain points or challenges that they face?
Some of the trends that I see the most often in organization is efficiency and systems issues. And bad systems create bad behaviors. And it looks like people are acting bad, but when you correct the system issue, then the behaviors correct themselves. So that's one of the key things that I see inside organizations. The other thing I see is people put values on the wall, espouse values, and they're not walking the talk.
I've seen that as well. And, you know, where you see slogans or taglines and that identify the culture of the organization. But if leadership is not, you know, walking the walk and talking the talk, it just, as human beings, we see that, you know, and it reveals itself. I was very intrigued, by the way, in the case study you provided earlier, where there was themed meeting rooms, I think, that labeled, you know, joy and passion. Did just out of curiosity, did they use those rooms based upon the theme of the topic of those meetings, or how was that utilized?
They did not.
Okay.
It was just like, let's meet in the joy room or the passion room. Instead of meeting room A or B, it became, you know, the room name.
I see. I like that. Yeah, I've been in law firms where they theme each conference room based upon a geographic location, and which is fun. You know, it kind of brings you to that location, and in the case you described, it brings you to that theme or that topic, right?
Yes.
So that's fun. Well, look, how can, and you're the expert here, so I'm going to ask you some pretty tough questions, but I think you could answer them with ease. Question I have for you is, you know, how can the Barrett model make the intangible aspects of culture tangible? And then, you know, once you take that intangible into a tangible report, which is ideally utilized by leaders to manage and optimize their organizations, you know, cultures effectively. Give us some examples of, you know, how the Barrett model can bring the intangible tangible.
You know, how about I go through the Barrett model and explain how that works, and then we'll talk about how it brings it to life.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the Barrett model has 7 different levels of thinking, and it's not a hierarchical model. It's a model that one builds on the other. So there are 7 levels. At levels 1, 2, and 3, it's all about me. So we have positive values, and also potentially limiting values, like I mentioned in the case study. So we measure those at 1, 2, and 3. At levels 4, 5, 6, and 7, we say the shadow goes away and we focus only on the positive. So at level number 1, it's the easiest level to understand. It's about viability. It's about bottom line results. Are we meeting our targets? Are we making our shareholders happy? So that's the first aspect on it. The second part of it, it's about safety. So this is where organizations focus on OSHA and making sure their employees are safe. There's also a shadow side to level number 1 that comes around greed and exploitation. So if you're too focused on bottom line results, you might also have a short-term focus. Does level 1 make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yeah.
And of the 7 models, that being the first, there's no hierarchy to it as you described. It seems more like a train, right, where one leads the other. Is that right?
Yeah, that's, and the idea is that you have full spectrum thinking across all 7 levels. And the Barrett model takes a snapshot of where you are currently, where your employees are, and where you desire it to be. So we look at it from 3 different perspectives. So level 2 is about one-on-one relationships. That's about you and me, Brian. Can you and I get along? Can
So
you
far,
and I
so good.
so far so good? Can you and I respect one another? So this is where the golden rule comes from. And also this is where we look at, taking care of our customers and do we have respect? This is also the level that creates the most drama in the workplace, which is relationships, right? This is where we can have blame and jealousy and internal competition. Anything that causes stress in the relationship happens at level number 2. Level number 2 clear?
Very clear, very clear. What does level 3 look like?
Level number 3 is what we all aspire to, and that's performance. It's about bringing our best systems to life. So this is about quality, productivity, efficiency, self-esteem, being our best in our work. So it's about a professional atmosphere. The shadow side of level number 3 is long hours, hierarchy, bureaucracy, things that get in the way of productivity. Level 4 is about evolution. This is a point where leaders transform. You can think about it from this level. Levels 1, 2, and 3, leaders become managers, or managers manage the business. At levels 4, 5, 6, and 7 is where an individual starts to move out of management into leadership. And it's who someone is being according to their values that starts inspiring them versus what they're doing. So at level number 4, it's about a change in growth focus. It's about evolution. It's about your ability to innovate and change and be accountable and responsible. This is where teamwork happens and people's voices start to be heard. It's the level where people start to come together. At level number 5, this is like a character focus. This is on alignment. This is the predictable level that you see, like Whole Foods, Southwest Airlines, Container Store. They're all level 5 companies that have a fun, positive spirit, but they're also rooted in integrity, authenticity, and people really having a voice to speak their truth. It's also the level of trust and trustworthiness. So when you as a person becomes trustworthy at level number 5, you can start to grant trust to others. At level number 6, does all that make sense?
It does. It does. This is really valuable nuggets of information. Please continue. This is great.
Okay. Level number 6 is about collaboration. So this is about focusing in on your community. This is about creating strategic alliances with your clients and collaborating with them. This is where we say, let's figure out the problem together and get to work. This is also where organizations, people, and leaders say, I want to do something in my local community. So oftentimes organizations adopt a nonprofit like Harvesters or building homes, food drives. That all happens at level number 6. And level number 7 is about collaboration on the planet. So it's about a purpose focus, making a difference on a global level. And as a leader, we ask ourselves the question, who am I and what is my legacy? How do I want to leave the world a better place? So it's a very high level value that requires a deep sense of caring and social responsibility. And some organizations get to this point and some don't. It's really a reflection of the leaders up top. So what we do with the Barrett methodology is we take a snapshot of your organization, including your leaders at the top, to find out where you're aligned. And we look at organization A versus organization B and do a comparison of what can we learn from a culture perspective from each organization. And then we create a roadmap on how we're going to integrate these cultures together. So we're consciously creating the path versus after it happens going, oh my, now what do we do? So we help you think about it strategically and help with that roadmap.
That's fantastic, because you could see as organizations embrace the Barrett model, they find themselves, sounding the drum at the same cadence, the same beat, because the common theme, it seems to me, as I listen to you, is it's really alignment of the people, and some of that alignment is internally within the company, internally within the individual is actually where you started, but then you ended with more philanthropic work, which is alignment even outside of the organization, right? And how the organization is perceived to the public and to the community. But it is such a powerful element in my experience and what I've seen in companies, because when you do that, it really brings a community of the organization. It creates a community out of the organization, right? And I was speaking with an entrepreneur earlier this week. He went off and started his own company, and I just had some questions. How did he end up there? Where did he start his career? And he was sharing with me that he left the company he was with, and he actually missed the culture of that company. And so after hearing that, I encouraged him. I said, well, look, you need to replicate that in your own company now that you have embarked on this journey. And he agreed, and he's working hard to do that. But it just speaks volumes when, of course, I'm not saying names here, but it speaks volumes when you hear a story like this, even though he left the company he was with to start and pursue his entrepreneurial passions, right? But it's still that culture resonated with him so strongly that he misses it. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And he has an opportunity to create his own culture, and he can do it, like consciously creating, like who does he want to be, and what talent does he want to attract in? Like one of my clients that I work with, I actually help them with his hiring to make sure the people that he hires in are aligned with the core values that they have stated, because they want to grow and scale. But as you grow and scale, it's harder to keep the culture intact. So if you do it in a systematic way by making sure everyone you bring on board's values are aligned, then you have a greater chance of success growing that business and scaling it.
Yeah, I could see that. And, especially an organization that's growing in different geographic regions around the country, around the world, I can see how that can be challenging to keep that culture intact. And that is really interesting to me. Ellen, as we conclude this conversation, what advice or key takeaways would you offer to leaders and to organizations looking to utilize the Barrett model for culture assessment and ultimately enhancement? You know, what would be some of those tips and tricks that you would leave them with?
You know, some tips that I have for you are make sure your culture is aligned with your strategy. That's the first one. The second is look at where your leaders or leadership is aligned or misaligned. And where, if you're looking at a merge, where are your cultures compatible and where are they not compatible? The fourth one is how can you leverage the strengths of your culture with each other and make it bigger together than you are apart? So implementing the Barrett methodology will actually help you, whether you're in a merger and acquisition or just wanting to scale your business, to help you get the most out of your people by aligning your values with the direction you want to take your company. And it is reported that highly aligned, values-driven organizations outperform those that don't. And people love to come to work at places that have happy, fulfilled cultures, and people stay longer. So it's better for the bottom line, it's better for your employees, and it's better for your clients. So it's a win-win-win on helping create a strong, cohesive culture.
I love that. And that those tips and tricks, you know, ultimately contribute to an equation. We say, you know, 1 + 1 = 3 or greater, right? Because when you can amplify a culture, the results will amplify as well. And that breaks different spectrums from, you know, financial growth and strength into geographic, to sometimes it's products and services, right? Just when everyone is aligned and working on the same vision, I've seen it, and it's remarkable what can happen. So I really appreciate that advice, you know, for folks. And those that do want to learn more about you and your firm and the offerings that you provide, you know, can you give everyone a sense of how long does it take to navigate through the Barrett model and the advice that comes from that assessment? How long is that journey?
Well, it depends how large the organization is. I meet my clients where they are and have different pathways of helping them. So it could be a short, 3-month journey, or it could be a 2 or 3 year journey. Cultures don't change overnight. We didn't get to where we are overnight. And the stats are that it takes 3 to 7 years to turn a culture around. And we can help you do that by starting with making what you know is intangible and make it tangible, and then create the roadmap for getting the business that you want into reality.
Yeah, I love that. That is powerful. And Ellen, I'm sure we could talk for hours on and as related to the Barrett model and other case studies of the work that you've done over the years. We really appreciate you spending the time with us, sharing your wealth of knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained. And I'm certain that you've impacted those tuning in and listening, if anything, provoked thought in them to think more about their culture and how they should be driving that. And for those that are tuned in and are interested in connecting with Ellen, we will have a link down below where you can reach out to us and we will connect you. And as you pursue the work that you see fit for your organizations. But Ellen, thank you again, and let's definitely stay in touch. Would love to speak with you again on another episode. And But until then, continue the great work that you're doing. And I look forward to bringing you in and introducing you to our client base as well, because I can clearly see how your work can minimize risk for our clients and even the investors of our clients. If that sounds good to you, we'll definitely keep an open line of communication here.
That sounds great to me. I look forward to collaborating with you and helping your clients become better versions of themselves.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you, Ellen. I'll see you soon. And all of those of you tuning in, thank you for joining this episode of Private Capital Mastery. I'm your host, Brian Franco, and I look forward to spending more time with you next week as we unpack more details and we open up the playbook as to how to prepare your company to access capital in the private capital marketplace. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful week.